Good evening, everyone. My name is Ryan Stewart, and I'm a planner with the county's Department of Planning and Development. I'd like to welcome you all this evening to the 2025 SSPA process and the Franconia and South County nominations meeting. It's March 31st, 2025. Just to go over a few housekeeping procedures before we begin. Tonight's meeting is being recorded. It will be made available on the county's website following this meeting, so that those of you who would like to view this again, or for those who are not able to attend this evening, are able to have access to that. We do have closed captioning available. It's auto-generated through Zoom. If that's a service that you would like, please let us know in the chat box, and we'd be happy to activate that for you. Just in terms of participation this evening, we would ask that everyone please remain on mute until called to speak. We'll have several options here throughout the meeting after each module to be able to open it up for questions and comments and things. And so we'll have some opportunities for engagement as we go along. And at that time, if you do wish to speak, please use the raise hand button on the bottom of the screen. That way, we'll let one of our meeting hosts know that you can speak, and we'll introduce you. Some versions of Zoom may have a reactions button that you'll need to check before you see a raise hand option. If that's the case, just please know that you may have that reaction button check as well. And if you do not wish to provide feedback verbally this evening, please place it in the chat box and we'll answer it there. We'll be monitoring that. We can either answer that over the chat, or we can discuss that more in provide an answer verbally to you. And of course, if you're like me and you'll remember something right after this call ends, no worries. You can always email us at dpdsspa@fairfaxcounty.gov. And so that's an email address that's monitored, and we'll get back to you just as soon as we're able to. So by way of an agenda this evening, again, my name is Ryan Stewart. I'm one of the senior planners here with the Department of Planning and Development, and I'm on the SSPA team. With me this evening, I see on the call, we've got Vice Planning Commissioner Evelyn Spain of the Sully District. Commissioner Spain, did you have any opening comments that you would like to make? And if not, that's perfectly fine. I guess we can come back to Commissioner Spain then. But just moving on to introductions. Also with me this evening are my colleagues, Leah Niebauer, one of our senior planners in the department as well, and Katrina Knutson is a senior planner with us as well. Look for those names. So if I'm not able to see the screen as I'm presenting, we will have them monitor the chat and monitor any of the logistics behind the scenes as we go along. So,
excuse me,
yes,
Ryan. Commissioner Spain, and I have
no
opening comments, and unless I just say I'm happy that the community is on board and listening tonight, and we'll be happy to respond during our SSPA session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. So in terms of the presentation this evening, we'd like to keep it somewhat brief so that we can have some time for discussion and some questions and answers. Of course, we do have some background to cover, just some context and some information on the nominations that we're covering this evening. You'll see we do have 4 here on the agenda this evening. We've got some in the Franconia district and others in the Mount Vernon district. So just please keep that in mind when we do have comments and questions. To please keep things brief so that we can move along and have everyone afford everyone the opportunity to participate here. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and we'll move forward into some of the information here. So the countywide SSPA process is really an opportunity for property owners and other members of the public to propose land use changes as nominations to amend the comprehensive plan for a single site or a small collection of parcels. The goal of SSPA is to provide the community with an active role in shaping the long-term vision of Fairfax County. So prior to SSPA, several years ago, many of you may be familiar with what we call the Area Plan Review Process, or APR. This was a similar type of community-initiated review of the comprehensive plan, but you'll see today and in 2019 when we did our last SSPA round. No, I apologize for that. That was 2022, I believe, was our last one. We did 2019 was SSPA round. We did APR just prior to that. But Just to avoid any confusion, APR and SSPA are functionally the same level of product for the community. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is really to provide the community with information about the SSPA process and to invite public comments on several SSPA nominations that were submitted in both the Franconia and the Mount Vernon supervisory districts. But to be very clear, for those of you who have not been involved in this process before, no decisions will be made for any of the projects that are being discussed tonight. We're simply sharing information and hoping to hear from you. The board will be acting on the SSPA screening phase this summer, and I'll get into some detail of exactly what that means in some future slides. But again, no decisions to be made tonight, and certainly nothing is pending that would enable development in the short term. So let's kind of take a step back here and talk a little bit about what the comprehensive plan is and what it does for the county. Want to make sure that we're kind of, before diving into the SSPA process, focusing on a long-range comprehensive planning and how the county takes that into consideration. So most of you may be familiar with the comprehensive plan, but for those who might not be, it's essentially the county's primary policy document about land development and the use of the natural environment. Essentially, it's a guide to help decision makers with the question how we want the county to use its land and natural resources over the next maybe 20, even in some cases 30 years. So it's a long-range vision, but it's a reflection of the public's vision and goals for the county and the communities in which they live. But most importantly, it's also a living document. We amend it regularly to be able to meet the demands of a vibrant community and one that has been subject to change over the years. And although the plan recommendations are an important part of the overall land development process, they're not law and they're not enforceable, like, say, the zoning ordinance or other local ordinances or laws that we might have. The plan is used by the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, county staff, and the community as a common basis for decision-making on land use and zoning applications, and its guidance is implemented through land development laws such as zoning or subdivision. And so this is a guidance document that sets the overall policy for land development in the county. Now, land development in Fairfax County is very complex, and it covers everything from an initial development idea through planning to permitting and construction, through the use of a building or what we call occupancy, when it comes time to renew that building or repurpose that building, and finally up until the time that it is an opportunity to redevelop a site. Now, I won't go through each of these steps in detail, but I did want to point out that our SSPA process evaluates development ideas at the very earliest stages of a concept. And for those that make it through the screening process, these are further evaluated for a potential amendment to the comprehensive plan if it's needed, or evaluated further in the zoning and entitlement phases. But it's really not until we get into these later zoning and entitlement phases that we start looking at specific impacts of a community or how they might be minimized. At these early stages, we're really looking for whether or not a particular proposal has merit to move forward for further consideration in the SSPA process, and then under what conditions that proposal may need to be evaluated against in the case of a comprehensive plan amendment, how it would fit into our overall policies. One of the most important elements of the comprehensive plan is the map shown on this slide. It's called a concept for future development. It's the overarching guide for the county's pattern of growth since the 1990s. There's various colors on this map. There's black, purple, red, tan, and so forth, and these represent activity centers, areas planned to receive the vast majority of the county's growth and development. These are generally mixed-use centers such as Tyson's, Reston, the areas around metro stations, community business centers. Each of these have some things in common. They all have general access to transportation corridors and employment opportunities. And then outside of these areas, such as the yellow suburban neighborhoods or the green low density residential areas, these are places where change can and will occur, but it's generally on a much limited fashion. It's at a much slower pace. The idea here is to drive the growth that will happen toward the areas that are planned to accommodate it, rather than to promote suburban sprawl throughout the county. And as we start to look at how the comprehensive plan recommends growth, there are some common terms. Two of the most common terms are density and intensity. These are terms that refer to the quantity of development and will be used in our later discussions on the nominations. And so we've got density, intensity, and what we call FAR, or floor to area ratio, and I'll get into what that is. So residential intensity is most often measured in dwelling units per acre. Fewer dwelling units per acre is a less dense development. So for example, a single family detached home, they're often located in a 1 to 2 or a 3 to 4 dwelling unit per acre area, and the county considers this to be generally low density development. Townhouses, or what you may see is called attached single family homes, are generally at higher densities. And then we have multifamily apartments and condominiums are at higher densities of up to 12 dwelling units per acre or more. So you kind of see this pattern where, as the number of dwelling units per acre intensifies or gets more dense, you see this change in development pattern. And so you can get a sense of kind of how the county has classified the various types of development within the county, whether that's low, medium, or high. And you also can see how maybe your own neighborhood might fit into this pattern and where the county might consider your neighborhood pattern. Now, intensity, on the other hand, is most often used in non-residential and mixed use contexts. These are areas where you might have residential, retail, office, or other activities within the same development. Floor to area ratio, or FAR, is a term that is most used to describe the intensity, and to calculate this, we divide the floor area of a building space by the land area within the development site. And so picture, if you will, maybe some stacking blocks of Legos. You've got a base plate that you can build on, and you would stack the blocks in various configurations. In the example shown here, we can see 3 different design scenarios that would all yield a medium intensity of about a 1.0 FAR, which is essentially where your building area equals the amount of space available on that parcel. And so you can see here that if you start to build up and have multiple stories, you'll in intent have the same level of intensity, but you'll be increasing the amount of open space on that parcel. So the configuration opportunities here are very numerous. And the planning and zoning, whether that's through policy or through regulation, will direct not only the intensity of a site, but also how it can be designed and configured in terms of design and form. You may see some terms such as a setback from a property line, which is a distance where development is limited to on a parcel. You may see some limits on building heights or other similar things that really work to regulate and contain the form of development on the parcel, which gets very important when looking at things like FAR when you really have options for multiple configurations. Let's talk a little bit about why we're here this evening, the SSPA screening process, now that we have this background in comprehensive planning. So as I mentioned earlier, the site-specific plan amendment screening process is where we are today, and it's really at the very beginning of the development cycle. There are many ways to amend the comprehensive plan, and the SSPA process allows any member of the community to ask the Board of Supervisors for a change. To do so, they'll submit a request detailing the proposal, a justification for why that change is needed, and perhaps some very preliminary concepts. These nominations are generally for one or a few parcels that the nominator has an interest in. Now, screening is the process that the county uses to decide which proposals align best with the county's policies and goals and have merit for further consideration under a more detailed process of a plan amendment. It's a way to decide where the county should focus its efforts, and it relies on the community to assist in that decision. At the end of the process, the Planning Commission will recommend changes to the Comprehensive Plan Work Program, or which is a list of all the amendments in the pipeline for future consideration. It ends up being a recommendation that the Board of Supervisors will ultimately conduct their own public process and ultimately take an action on how to amend that work program. But essentially, the work program is an outline of where planning efforts should be focused in the next few years. If you're familiar with something like a public process for a capital improvement plan, say, for example, for in school construction or in public facilities construction, this is much the same thing, is that you have a prioritized plan of where to focus your efforts in any given level of time. But to reiterate, This process can only determines what should be considered for a future amendment. It doesn't amend the plan or grant entitlements or allow any development to occur. At this stage of the game, we're simply asking the community for their assistance in where the county ought to focus their efforts. Here's a list of some of the factors that staff considers when evaluating a nomination for screening. First of all, does the nomination address emerging community interests? You know, has something changed in the community that would facilitate the need for a plan amendment, or does the area's policy no longer meet the goals of the community? On a broader scale, does the nomination advance the objectives of the county's comprehensive plan and/or the concept of future development? Is this something that within broader county policy, you see, does this fit within the overall growth pattern of the county? Does the nomination align with the goals of the Board of Supervisors and their adopted policies? So for example, you might see certain proposals that may focus on particular elements such as, say, affordable housing, or economic development, or job growth, or things of this nature, transportation. And so we want to look at each nomination to see how it really fits within the adopted policies and the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan, and where the greatest benefit might be. And to that end, does the nomination balance the public resources that are available versus the public benefit? So kind of where are we making investments in the planning process that can have the greatest public good? And also, is the current use or comprehensive plan recommendation viable? So we compare the nomination against what the comprehensive plan currently recommends, and we evaluate that as a consideration on whether or not a change should be made. Now, the timeline here, we've talked a lot about the process, but just to put this in terms of how long this all takes. From January to February, you may have received some information on a nomination period. We were accepting nominations from the community members. On March 4th, the Board of Supervisors took action to accept nominations into the screening process. And I will say that not all nominations were accepted. There were a few that that were not accepted into that process for various reasons. We are now in the screening phase, where we're conducting community meetings and really starting our staff's initial evaluation of the proposals, gathering community feedback, and really starting to develop a program to take to the Planning Commission in May and early June of 2025. We'll host a series of workshops with the Planning Commission. These are publicly available, so you're welcome to attend these. But the end result here will be a markup of the work program and recommendations to the Board of Supervisors on which projects should move forward, and also what the priority of those projects might be. And then in June, we anticipate the Board of Supervisors taking action on this amended 2025 comprehensive plan work program. And based on the amendments that are made, that's going to dictate where the county focuses its efforts and what nominations to ultimately move forward and at what pace. So what happens if a nomination passes screening? So it gets through this process. Well, what's next? And I mentioned it goes on the work program. The board prioritizes it, and then staff will schedule the review of the proposal and any future opportunities for public engagement, really based on how the board has prioritized that project. You'll see here that some on the work program are what we call a tier 1, which is the highest priority, which tend to be projects that really have the highest public value, or that they're ready to move forward. In which case, we tend to look at those in terms of a priority 1. We have a tier 2, which are projects that may be ready to move forward, but they for whatever reason, it's just not the same level of priority. And then a tier 3 are projects that are really what we would consider a deferred category, where they have merit in moving forward, but some things need to happen first. Perhaps that's re-examining the concept, or doing some additional community outreach before the plan amendment process. So what happens if a nomination does not pass screening? In this case, the nomination is removed from consideration from this cycle of the plan amendments, and it's not added to the work program. In this case, the project is potentially, it could be redeveloped under what the conference plan recommends, or based on how it's currently zoned. It could be also resubmitted in a future SSPA cycle for perhaps maybe demonstrating some changes in circumstances or to the proposal. So there's always the opportunity to reconsider these projects at a later date. Typically, we do an SSPA nomination cycle about every 2 years. And so if something doesn't make it through this round, there's always the chance that we will see that again in the future. You can see here under the current 2025 year, you can see where our nominations under this round fell geographically. Overall, we had 53 nominations submitted. 43 of those are now under review and screening. You can see that about 10 of those did not make the initial cut for various reasons. But what was ultimately accepted by the Board of Supervisors were these 43 nominations. And where we're focused on this evening is down in the Franconia and Mount Vernon districts, in the western part of those two districts, with the 4 applications that we'll be discussing this evening. Now, I'm going to take a break from talking. I just did quite a lengthy presentation, but I want to open it up to see if there are any questions on process matters or timeline or anything like that before we get into the nominations themselves. And if I could have some help from my co-host in terms of either the chat or seeing who has their hand raised, as I'm presenting, I'm not able to see that for myself.
Ryan, there's a
Yes.
question in the chat. It says, who submits these nominations?
So nominations can be submitted by anyone in the community. It could be a landowner, it could be a developer, it could be someone who wants to see a particular action in their community. For example, we've had private residents before submit nominations for things such as establishing a public park, for example. So really the scope of these is pretty varied, and you'll see that many nominators come from all parts of the community, all walks of life. We do see some development interest. We see some local residents, and we just see people who are just interested in changing policies that may, in their view, have a better community, do good for the community better than what's currently in the plan. So it can really vary. And Katrina, do we have any further questions? If not, I'll go ahead and we can move forward a little bit.
No, that is it that I can see that it's regarding the process.
Okay, great, thank you. Of course, we'll be on after all of these nominations at the end of the presentation. So if any questions come up, we can also answer them as well.
Ryan, there was one, I'm sorry, there was one more question
Yes,
that came in. And I don't
please.
think we have a direct answer to this. It's like, what percentage of the 2025 nominations were from developers? I mean, Ryan, I'll let you go ahead and answer that.
We'll have to do a little bit of analysis to see who those came from. It's not something we typically track because oftentimes it's not 100% obvious who the developer might be or who the landowner might be. In the case of some folks have privately held parcels. They're not developers, but they may be a landowner in an LLC, for example. So it's really hard to tell in terms of who the development interest is, whether that's just a landowner, a developer, a member of the public. It can really depend, but we can certainly look into the nominations a little bit more as we get more details and as we start to work with the nominators. Let's see, so moving forward, we're going to start off here with the nominations we've received for this meeting tonight. Certainly not an exhaustive list, but we've got the Hilltop Village Center in the Franconia district as number 1 there on the map at the intersection of Beulah and Telegraph. We've got a property for residential development, Beulah Street at the intersection of Steinway Street. We've got a nomination for Pohick Rd in Lorton, and also a nomination for Lowisdale Road and Newington Road. And I will we'll get into the details here of these. And so I'm going to continue talking, and then for the Mount Vernon nominations, I'll turn it over to my colleague Leah for those presentations. But we'll go ahead and get started on the first one here this evening, Hilltop Village Center. So This particular nomination is, as I mentioned, at the corner of Beulah Street and Telegraph Road. Many of you may live in this area and shop here at the shopping center. It's approximately 31.7 acres. From a planning perspective, the comprehensive plan is broken up into geographic areas. And so we call these planning districts and community planning sectors. This site is in the Rose Hill Planning District and in the Lehigh Community Planning Sector. And then the western part is in the Springfield District and the Newington Community Planning Sector. So if you're looking for plan guidance on this area, that's where you would look in the text. The existing conditions are this is a shopping center with retail and some service uses. The adopted plan calls for private recreation and residential use at 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. There's that metric that we mentioned earlier. And then there is an option for retail and office mixed use up to an intensity of a 0.3 Florida area ratio with conditions. And that's how the property is developed today, is exercising that second plan option for the mixed use at about a 0.3 FAR. This nomination would add a residential use to the adopted mixed use option, increasing the intensity to about a 0.41 FAR in order to provide for a 280 multifamily unit residential building at the corner of Telegraph and Beulah Street. You'll see here in the next slide here, this is where this would be located on the corner here. Under the original entitlement for the property, this particular site within the development called for an office building that was of similar size, but that office building was never constructed, and now the nominator would like to in essence, replace that office building and that office use with multifamily residential development. We did have a similar nomination, some of you may recall, back in 2019. A previous nominator, not the current nominator, proposed a multifamily building of about 300 units and about a 0.45 FAR. This nomination was ultimately withdrawn during the screening phase. The nominator cited concerns from the community, and so it never made it into the work program. It was one of these that did not make it past the screening process. So if this does move forward under a multifamily development consideration, we would want to make sure to re-engage with the community, make sure that we're hearing from the residents, and also from Fort Belvoir. We understand that there may be some concerns about force protection or encroachment management, that sort of thing, given the proximity to the military installation. But given that this does, if this does move forward, some things that staff will be considering are just the, how this overall proposal fits within the context of the retail development that's already there, what the potential impacts might be to adding residential use, what the benefits of that would be, and we'd have to look at all of these in greater detail. But I'm going to defer on some details here. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our nominator, who is going to provide a brief presentation for the community. And so I will go ahead and do that. So if you please go ahead and unmute yourself. I believe, yep. Is it Abby who's on the phone, or is this Evan on the phone currently? Or?
Yes, this is Evan Pritchard. I'm going to hand it over to Abby momentarily. My name is Evan Pritchard. I'm a land use attorney at Wire Gill. Worked with the property owner to prepare and submit this nomination you're going to hear about tonight. As Ryan mentioned, this same property was the subject of a nomination back in 2019. As he mentioned, there has been a change in ownership since that time. And for the last couple of years, the new owner has been looking at this and has begun to a lot of outreach to the various neighborhoods that are nearby surrounding the shopping center, and have also had multiple conversations with Fort Belvoir. So with that little intro, Abby with Kimco is going to take over and tell you more about the nomination.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I see some familiar names on here, so I'm glad those of you we've already talked to are here and can kind of get the updated information. Ryan, can you go to the next slide, please? I want to remind everybody that Kimco, we are a publicly traded real estate REIT, and we own over 550 properties across the country, and we are a long-term owner. So we have invested interest, and we want to be your neighborhood shopping center. So I know a lot of you probably already go to the Wegmans. And so really, we wanted to emphasize that we are stewards of our land. And so really kind of what we're doing is trying to do the best for the retail, as well as do the best for the community. And so you can see we're around, and you can find us. If you go to the next slide, please. Ryan mentioned this, but really this is kind of the existing approval that we have on the site. And as you can see in blue is the 4-story office building that was previously approved. As he mentioned, it's not been built. It is currently a pad parking site that is somewhat utilized just to be close to the main street, but is not fully utilized. If you go to the next slide, you can see our concept. Really, the idea is that we've not been able to market to an office building user. And so we talked with the community and we came up with a couple of things. We've got a slide later, which we'll talk a little bit more about that. But really what came up to is there wasn't a retail user that would work. Chick-fil-A talked about going here, but they ended up going down the road. There wasn't a restaurant user that would go here. They would rather be in the existing Main Street retail. And so we really came back to residential here. And so what we thought was we would do a better concept plan that was previously. We lowered the amount of residential units. It's hard to see on this, but basically there are no units that actually face Telegraph Road to deal with the security concerns from the base. And so there wouldn't be anyone overlooking on that side of the property. And so it actually creates a pretty nice concept. Next slide, please. As a part of this proposal, we'd also like to improve the 3 existing open spaces that you can see that are outlined in red here. The goal would be to create some additional public outreach, public opportunities for gathering, both on a passive as well as events for the neighborhood, the new residential, the existing retail, and the surrounding community. So some ideas that we've talked about internally, but obviously we would work through this with the neighbors and the public outreach as we continue through the process, but opportunities for a stage, so you could do a music night, a fire pit, so you could kind of gather around that, and then an open lawn, so you could do picnics and stuff like that. Next slide, please. Here's really the summary of kind of what we heard from everybody talking about the 2020 proposal. The traffic concerns, which I did see is in already in the chat, some school capacity issues, the security concerns from the base that I already mentioned, the too large for a unit in 2020, and then some issues on community benefits and developers not actually going through with what they say they will. And so really we're taking that to heart and we're trying to kind of roll all these things together. Next slide, please. So you can see here in this view, and so really what we've done is try to take those concepts, those comments into heart. And so you can see on the right side, kind of where it looks like there's bright colors, that's like a mural, and that's kind of camouflaging that there's no unit windows that overlook on that side. We also have plenty of setbacks and greenery so that it looks like it fits within the neighborhood. There's a lot of slope there. So I think we're trying to deal with that and kind of provide some interest at this gateway corner really into the neighborhood. Next slide, please. The building is no taller than what was currently approved with the office building. We're about a foot and change shorter. So you can see on the left, the office building that was approved, and then on the right, kind of our proposal. Next slide, please. The building footprint obviously is slightly larger. You can see on the bottom right, kind of where the outlines of them overlay, and then kind of in the red massings. So we do extend farther to the north and to the west, but we do have less views to the base to the south and to the east. Next slide, please. This is the main entrance into the center off Beulah. And as you can see, we've really tried to create something that fits with what's already there with the 2-story Panda Express and retail that's right there at the corner. And so really, stepping back, having some nice landscaping and lawn in front of the building, but also varying the facade along Beulah, so it's not a long facade as you turn into the neighborhood. Next slide, please. I did want to go ahead and put this in there. We have done some preliminary traffic analysis, and we've compared it to the existing approval. And so we are providing approximately 844 less trips on a day-to-day basis than is already approved if we move forward with this concept. However, there are some slightly more trips leaving the center in the morning. However, in total, there is less traffic in the morning than normal. Obviously, as we move forward in the process, we would get in more detail and kind of do more traffic analysis, but this is the very high level first step summary that gave us some confidence that this could fit within the existing approval that's already allowed on the center. And with that, I believe that is our last slide. And so I turn it back to Ryan and I believe community comments.
Great, thank you. Before we move on to the next nomination here, I just wanted to go ahead and open it up for any community comments we might have. I know I've seen some action here in the chat, but we can go ahead and I would go ahead and answer any questions that anyone might have on this particular nomination before moving on to the next.
Yeah, Ryan, this is Luann. Does the
Hello,
county,
Ann.
hi, does the county weigh in on the proposal, or by the virtue that it's here and we're talking about it, it's already sort of tacitly approved?
No, nothing has been approved. This is
No,
all part of the
I don't
process
mean
for.
I don't mean approved as in approved. I mean, but you've looked at it and it doesn't, I mean, is that right? I mean, how does that work exactly?
So I guess there's several different. I should say there's several different layers of review here. Back when the Board of Supervisors accepted the nominations into the screening process, there was we briefed the staff consolidated all of the information that we had on the proposals. We briefed the Board of Supervisors on that, and so each board member was aware of their particular projects in their district, and so we do have that review that's already taken place, and so this is not the first time that this has been publicly reviewed.
Yeah.
But
Well,
this is again,
question.
this is one aspect of this review process.
Okay. Thank you.
And I should also note, just I know that I've received similar comments from other members of the community, is that this is certainly not the only opportunity that you'll have to engage in this process and be providing public comment on this. Even if this does ultimately get put onto the work program or any application for that matter, that whole process is also very community driven as well. And there's multiple opportunities once it becomes a plan amendment or a proposed plan amendment to speak up and to provide your input from the community. And so I don't want anyone to think that this is like everyone gets one bite at an apple and we're going to leave here at the end of tonight having made a decision, and that's certainly not the case.
Hi, Ryan. My name is Cecily Williams, and I'm a Hawthorne community member.
Hi, Cecily.
I'm also a member of the Land Use Committee, and my question is for Kimco. So in terms of the comments and concerns that the community had prior, based off of just the preliminary comments that we're hearing amongst ourselves and then also in this meeting, how do they plan to address that? Because our concerns are still the same from the original nomination that came by our area. The character of our neighborhood, I don't think warrants a multi-story building. And so in addition to just the building kind of being a monstrosity in our neighborhood, there's also still the concern of traffic. Traffic is still an issue with the current housing situation that we have in our area, in a particularly Telegraph Road in Beulah. So I guess my question is, how does Kimco intend to kind of address these concerns, because the concerns are still the same from a few years ago?
That's a great question, Cecily, and I'll go ahead and ask Abby or Evan to respond to that.
Yeah, Cicely, I mean, we plan on going through the community process exactly as the county states. So this is step one. So we would be going through every single thing that needs to be done in order to get approval to change. So we've only done the preliminary traffic analysis. We've not actually gone out and counted cars and all of that. So that would have to be done, and we would do that as the appropriate time throughout all of the through the stages as the process goes through the county. This is not a process of we get this approval and then the building gets built overnight. There is, we still have to do conceptual development plan. We still have to do site plan. We still have to do all of those processes. So we would do everything that goes all the way through and meet all of those expectations. I think our thought is that the office was already proposed here to be a taller building at this corner. And so as most people know, that office is not the greatest. Some people are returning to office, but not everybody is going back to work. A lot of people still work from home. And so I think the key here is that there's not a market for an office building in this location. And so we're just kind of working within the center was given additional density to be kind of a gateway corner entrance. And so we're trying to work within that to kind of create an opportunity. There's not any rental housing, multifamily rental housing within kind of this quadrant area. And so obviously our proposal would include affordable housing and all the other things that the county, green building standards and all of that. And so we would be working through that process as we move forward. And so I think, we're offering this concept because we think it's the right location. Retail properties actually do better when there's multifamily on there, which is one of the reasons that we're adding residential to our centers across the country, and why we're proposing it here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Abby. I see we have some hands raised here. I see first in the queue is Jane Kelly. Hi, Jane.
Hi, sorry, I had to get myself off mute. Okay, so there's the two parking lots there that the apartment complex and the parking garage are going to take up. Last time when we fought this and were successful, I knew the numbers, but after I'm done with all of my comments, if Abby can just tell me how many spots are currently out there in those two lots, because you're only allotting 120 retail for this new parking garage. And I guess I'm a little confused with how a 5-story apartment building is shorter, a 4-story, apartment building is shorter than a 5-story apartment complex. I also want to point out that if you're at the Lansdowne Shopping Center and you're exiting there, there's 2 lanes to get out onto Beulah. And it's a left lane. And so if anybody wants to go right, and somebody's going straight in front of them, they're held by the person going straight across to Hilltop. So that's going to be a big issue. The other concern is it's not pedestrian friendly intersection at the Lansdowne Shopping Center feeding into Hilltop. And you're going to have 280 units with a bunch of children. It's going to be a nightmare. And I guess that's all my comments at this point. Thanks.
Okay, I'll see if I can remember all of those, Jane. Hi, it's good to see you again. Okay, so parking in the lot, I believe there's approximately 100 spaces in the lot. So we are adding a couple spaces at 120 in the parking garage. And then the residential building, the residential parking would be above the retail parking kind of low in the lower levels of the garage.
So those 2 lots have 100 spots currently?
I think so. That's I haven't counted it, but it's right around 100. It may be like 105, but it's definitely less than what we're proposing at 120.
And you've already added that Tuscan restaurant's coming, ice cream store.
The Green Turtle is transitioning.
Bob and Edith's, you've got a lot of more retail in there, and you're only going to have 20 more parking spots?
So there's already all that stuff that you're talking about was already retail before. And so, even if they have more of a draw, the parking there should be sufficient. I think one of the things that we've heard from you all is that it's not all of it is as close to the Main Street as you would like. But I think the goal would be that those 120 spaces in the garage would help get you to the middle of the main street to be closer to Bob and Edith and whatnot. You know, there's a lot of parking that you can't, that's off this screen that you can't see, that hopefully some people are going to the Tuscan restaurant, and then obviously the lot kind of north of the Green Parkway, if they're going to Brewster's. It's not Brewster's. I can never remember the name of the restaurant on the top right corner. But that there's a lot of parking on the site, and so we definitely still meet zoning code parking regardless. The next question you had was height. Floor to floor heights are different on different uses, and so an office building has about a 14-foot floor to floor height. And so with 4 stories, that's how the building was about 56 feet tall, and residential has a much shorter floor to floor. It's give or take 10 feet or a little bit less, depending on which floor you're on. And so that's how we're at 5 stories, we're slightly lower than the approved office building. The traffic you mentioned, again, as I said earlier, we would be going through all of the traffic studies as through the process, and I can't speak to what the changes might come out of that, but the goal would be that we'd figure that out, and if we needed to provide a straight lane to go across to the center, across Beulah, we would do that, but again, we would kind of work with the traffic, what the traffic report says as we go through the process to figure out all those exact details. Did I miss anything, Jane? Was that?
Just give me a second. I don't think so.
That's okay.
Yeah, but real quick, we do have a question in the chat, as long as we're talking about the traffic analysis of when were these preliminary analyses, when were these numbers collected, or when was this analysis
So this is not, these are not collected counted numbers. These are numbers based on the square footage of proposed and of the existing approval and proposed uses. So I am not a traffic engineer, but from my understanding of how this works is basically you start with a math problem at the beginning. And so this is the result of the math problem. So the densities that you can see on the bottom that we listed out give this average estimated traffic on any kind of given day. And so you can see that the new proposal is less than kind of what is already approved. And so that is kind of this math, and you can see it's based on the 11th of the edition of the International Traffic Estimate. And so we did this work, we did this estimate about a year ago, to be fully honest, but it's not a count.
Yeah, I'm not a traffic engineer either, but I will at least say that these are kind of nationwide standards that are used, all throughout the country, as far as what types of uses generate what types of trips. And so to your point, yes, this is very much a math exercise versus kind of an on the street counting of vehicle trips. Yes,
Abby?
I'm sorry, we have someone who's coming in.
This is Jane still.
Yes, Jane, hi.
Abby, who did you speak to at Fort Belvoir? Because myself and 2 others met with facilities back in 2019, 2020. So I just want to know who you spoke to at Fort Belvoir.
I'm not going to remember their name. Evan, do you remember?
It was their successors. It's the current facilities folks that are out Fort Belvoir, and I can provide the names of those, but I don't recall them offhand either. But it was the people we were directed to by Supervisor Lusk's office that run the facilities at Fort Belvoir. And I just was going to chime in and add to what Abby was saying a moment ago. She's absolutely right. The ITE manual is the Bible when it comes to these traffic studies. But we would, if this moved forward as part of the rezoning process, we would have to go out and do actual observations on the ground, traffic counts, to bear out all this math out. And like she said, if it shows that changes to the light signaling timing is warranted, we would have to do those. If we had to add a new turn lane or change the movements at the intersection or provide some other mitigation measures, we would be required to do that as part of the rezoning process.
And this is Ryan again. To your point on the Fort Belvoir contact, I was actually I spoke to their Department of Public Works director this evening. As a matter of fact, they're aware of the project and review process, and so we've already started that outreach to them.
Ryan, I'm not
Yes.
sure
Yep.
if you just got muted by me, but I'm not sure. I did not hear your last couple sentences.
One moment here, I'll see if I can correct this.
I can hear you, Ryan.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry if I cut out there for just a moment. Jane, my comment was that I've been in contact with their director of public works over at Fort Belvoir, and they'll be involved in the process. Okay, I'm looking here at the chat. We've got some additional hands up. I believe the next one is Lois Glore.
Yes, thank you. I'm a great fan of Mosaic Development, and your building looks beautiful. And I've never had a problem getting a parking space when I go up to that shopping center to Wegmans. However, I live upstream on Beulah at Steinway, no less. And one of my big beefs, because I ride my bike, is the despicable condition of the street. The bike lane is full of gravel and glass and debris and cigarette butts and that kind of thing. And the more cars and the more density, the more the debris increases in the whole neighborhood. I'm wondering if it can be part of the development process to ensure that that gets addressed. Like right now, upstream on Beulah, I can't run fast enough anymore to get across the street to go to Knowles Market. I don't want this to turn into a Tyson's kind of congested area where you have to be in your car to go across the street. Can you address that? And I'll mute.
So if I understand correctly, your concern is the congestion and kind of the interaction between the vehicular traffic and the pedestrian traffic. Is that, do I understand that?
That and the vehicular traffic and the trash they throw out their windows all along the road. Because on Steinway Street, there's that empty land, and it's like a landfill right now. It's full of garbage. Because the current owner refuses to do anything about the garbage on his land and has refused communication about it. So I think that the developers have to be held accountable for the excess stress on the roads, so we can walk in our own community and ride our bikes in our own community.
Yeah.
So one of the primary goals that we have in the plan amendment process is looking at what are the potential community impacts that the development might have, whether that's traffic or whether that's issues with connectivity or pedestrians or biking or things like this. The plan amendment process will largely identify those issues and come up with kind of a framework by which to evaluate a rezoning application. But really, it's at the rezoning stage that we get into things like where particular sidewalks ought to be located, for example, or what the signal timing of an intersection might be for vehicular purposes, that sort of thing. And so what you'll see for those nominations that go through this process is that you'll see a gradual increase in detail at every stage of the process. So right now, with SSPA screening, we're only looking at whether or not something has merit for further consideration. If it gets to a plan amendment stage, we'll look at kind of under what policy considerations do we need to look at in a future rezoning. And then if it gets to that rezoning, we'll start looking at what are the potential impacts and how might those be mitigated and under what conditions would a development be appropriate. And so just generally speaking, this nation aside, you'll see that in any of these projects, you'll see this gradual increase in detail as we go forward. And so while we're certainly looking at things like traffic and we're looking at pedestrian connectivity and things of that nature now, we're looking at this, at least right now, from a very broad policy level, obviously, do we want pedestrians to have a safe environment? Well, absolutely. So how do we facilitate that happening at a policy level? And so I hope that answers your question. I do want to be mindful of the time here, and I do want to keep moving forward with the nominations. But I'll take one more question. I see that Leah Lambda Skidmore has her hand up.
Hi, yeah.
Hi.
So I've been involved with land use in Dewaskin, which is across the street from you, for a while, and biking across is between Hilltop and the Dewaskin property is a crapshoot. I don't know how much work you've done with Dewaskin. When I have approached them to fix certain things, which you will have to do if you build this building, whether you're going to get any help, audience, or anything like that, I guess you might say. Have you approached them about this increase in traffic and how that's going to affect their intersection on their side?
We have not spoken to the property owner of the retail center across the way from us. That would be something that we would probably do as we move forward. The only people we've talked to up to this point have been the neighborhoods, as well as the base. And so I think if you're able to share a contact, I'm happy to reach out. Typically, if you touch an intersection at all, you kind of have to, when you do the redevelopment process, you have to take into all four areas of the intersection, all four corners, if you will. And so we would, as we move forward, we would be looking at that intersection on all sides, even if Dewaskin doesn't do anything with their property across the street.
Yeah, well, you'd have to have them involved because I will tell you that the right-hand turn lane into their development and the disappearing sidewalk puts you on the street if you're biking, let alone being a pedestrian. And it's only a 3-sided sidewalk area. It's not 4-sided. So you only have one choice to get across there. That is going to be a major problem for you. And I don't have a current contact because, well,
Leah, I know from the county's perspective, we've reached out to them in terms of doing our initial outreach to adjacent property owners, and so they've been notified that there's a proposal here. They've been invited to this meeting. We've not heard directly from them yet, but we'll look forward to them being part of the process.
I hope so because my experience has been pretty negative. That's all I have.
So Ryan, if I could just quickly summarize here,
Yes, please.
Address the concern. I think Abby, you'd agree with me. Our goal here is not to add vehicular traffic to the area or exacerbate the situation. We'd like to make this community a little more walkable, have some residents who can walk to the restaurants, not just in the Hilltop Village Center, but in that Dewaskin Center across Beulah Street. So I think that, as Abby said, as we go forward in the process, our goal is going to be to see how can we make the area more walkable, better for biking, but not add to the traffic woes. And so we're going to be working closely with staff to figure out some creative solutions to do that. And that's absolutely going to include looking at uses across Beulah Street.
Okay, great. Thanks, Evan. Before we move on to the next nomination, I see one comment here in the chat. Someone's asked, is this the only opportunity for the public to give input on any of tonight's nominations before they go from screening to the next level? And I will reiterate that no, there are plenty of opportunities here. We have this round of community meetings, but then next month, the Planning Commission will be doing their public workshops, and that's another opportunity for the public to be involved as well. And then once the Planning Commission has developed a recommendation on the work program, there will be public hearings with the Board of Supervisors as well before they make an action. So there's lots of opportunities for the public to be involved. And then even beyond the SSPA process, when we get into the plan amendment, that's really where you will see the bulk of the community engagement. When we start to look at a lot of these questions in detail, we'll definitely want to be working with the community to develop that new guidance in the plan if this does move forward. And so, again, I just want to reiterate that this is the first opportunity of many to be involved. So please don't feel like this is the only chance that you'll have. So moving forward, I know just being mindful of time here, the next property is one that we've actually already talked about in the last nomination. The properties at Beulah Street and Steinway Street. This is about 10.9 acres located in the Rose Hill Lehigh Community Planning sector. The existing conditions are currently vacant, except for 2 of the lots here have been developed as a single-family detached residences. The adopted plan calls for residential use at 1 to 2 dwelling units per acre, and the nomination has proposed residential use up to 8 dwelling units per acre in order to facilitate development of about 70 single-family detached townhomes and also some single-family homes as well. We'll get into the details here with the nominator's presentation, but just some of the considerations that staff has looked at so far is that when you look at the overall development pattern for the area, residential use on the site would be generally compatible, given that there's a variety of different types of houses and different densities within the area. We'd want to look at things like the appropriate site design, kind of what this looks like in terms of recreational space, landscaping, tree preservation, buffering, building heights, and all the things that would really integrate this development into the community. We do note that the Plan Trails map has major paved trails along Beulah Street, going back to the comment on pedestrian connectivity that certainly is planned for the area. And so we'll want to look at how we might be able to integrate the pedestrian goals for the neighborhood in with this development going forward, and what that might entail on a policy level. We do have some questions on whether or not the proposal can be achieved in a future rezoning evaluation, just given the history of the zoning in this area. But certainly it's not something that would prohibit us from looking at this at a plan level. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over now to the nominator. Ms. Strobel, are you on the phone?
I am.
Okay, great, wonderful. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, so can we go to, thank you very much. So my name is Lynn Strobel with the law firm of Walsh Colucci. I'm here tonight representing the nominator, and the nominator is comprised of Craftmark Homes, and Craftmark is a local residential developer. They've been in this area for a number of years, and Robbie Malm is on the phone with us from Craftmark. I also have with us Aaron Vinson, who is a civil engineer that we've been working with, and hopefully between myself, Robbie, and Aaron, we can answer your questions this evening. So if we go to the next slide. So the application property before you this evening are 7 parcels that total about 11 acres. It's on the east side of Beulah Street at Steinway Street. It's currently zoned R1, and I would just note that it has not been the subject of any previous rezoning applications. The next slide. I included this aerial because I think it's helpful to see how the property is developed and how the surrounding properties are developed. So most of the parcels subject to the nomination are undeveloped. As it was mentioned, 2 are developed with residential use, but it's primarily undeveloped. When you look at the uses that are located on Beulah Street in this area, you'll see that across the street, even though it's zoned R1, we do have Knowles Produce and Garden Center, so commercial use. There's also a proximate 7-Eleven. Right to the north is a child care center. Public uses along the roadway include the elementary school, Lane Elementary. There's a church that's down the road. And you can see that there's also a variety of residential uses at a variety of densities. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And if we go to the next slide. So this is just a closer look at the nomination property. And I want to point out that it was part of a subdivision that was established in 1951. And that subdivision included the properties further down Steinway and on Jean Street. The entire subdivision was about 24 acres, and it included those adjacent 11 lots. They are not part of this nomination. These lots have mostly been developed with single-family homes. So, I mean, I appreciate staff's position regarding the fact that they believe that the removal of the lots from the original subdivision would not be permitted. So I do acknowledge that, but we are still working on some type of resolution to that issue. And that would, I think that what we have proposed would bring the nominated property into a closer alignment with the surrounding properties and the way that they have developed. And the next slide. And just looking a little bit more at the way that surrounding properties have developed, as I mentioned, there is commercially developed, not zoned property across the street. And what you're seeing to the north, the west, and the east are PDH4 communities. And while they are zoned PDH4, they are townhouse developments, specifically to the north and to the east. So they're townhomes that are developed at a higher density. And the reason for that is that even though these are zoned PDH4 and planned 3 to 4, these are part of the entire Kingstown development. So they looked at an overall density, even though the actual density is higher. Looking at this map, you can also see further to the west, our properties zoned R8. To the north, as I mentioned, there's the school and also additionally PDH zoned property. And we believe that this parcel is really going to be able to provide a transition from single family attached to the south to the single family attached to the north. And how we would do this, if you look at the next slide, that transition is made by a proposed combination of small lot, single family homes. You see that kind of, if you're looking at this to the south, which is on the left side of this, to the east, which is at the bottom. So you see these single family detached homes, and then the balance of the property are townhomes. We had suggested a proposed density of 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre. This does have 70 dwelling units with a density of 6.5 dwelling units per acre. So it's not close to the 8, it's more aligned with the density of surrounding development. This particular layout, which is just a concept plan, we clearly would have to go through, additional processes and look at a number of different things. But what we've shown here is a community that's served by private streets with an access to Beulah and an access to Steinway. There's a lot of open space. We have 30% open space with opportunities for recreation, including extension of existing trails. There's a trail that's within the VEPCO easement that will be extended, and there's a trail along Beulah. We're providing landscaping, including street trees, and we really think that this proposal is responsive to the evolution of the area proximate to Beulah Street. And that really was driven by the Kingstown and Manchester Lakes developments. When those communities were approved, it really did change the character of the area. We also believe that this addresses Fairfax County policies for providing additional housing and providing housing proximate to employment centers. There's a bus service on Beulah that would take this to the metro, also would take you to the new hospital that's being built in the area as well. So we do think that this makes a lot of sense when you look at the surrounding development, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So thank you. And I'm going to ask actually Robbie, who's on the phone with us, if there's anything he would like to add about the proposal or about Craftmark. Robbie?
Lynn, thank you very much. I think that pretty much covers it from an SSA standpoint. A little more about Craftmark is we've been building in Fairfax County for decades. Our company was founded in the early 1990s, and we've built thousands of homes in Fairfax County. We live in Fairfax County, and we're very vested in these local neighborhoods.
Thank you, Robbie. Jen would be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thanks, Robbie. Thanks, Lynn. Appreciate that overview. I'll go ahead and open it up to any questions. I see here that Lois has her hand raised.
Yes, sorry, I back up to that piece, my property, and the Craftmark homes. That's a pretty drawing, and I have no track record with them, and they may be invested. But in this piece of property, the person or the LLC that owns it is not invested in it because they've let it become a landfill over the last decade, and they refuse to do anything to ameliorate the situation. The sidewalk along there, I'm a senior citizen, and I've been out there shoveling it because it's covered with dirt and debris. And to put this many homes, I think if Craftmark Homes were given the project of filling that in with, say, 4 units per acre, they would present a really nice presentation. But this presentation doesn't do it for me. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Lois. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on this one?
Yes.
Just checking the chat here. I don't see any questions per se, but I see some comments that we've acknowledged, and we'll make sure that we address each of those. Someone else on the phone?
Yes, I do have a question. This is Pam Vanderberg, and I'm in Kingstown
Pam.
community, and I am right behind this at Queens Court. And there's a couple of comments, and originally we were under the impression that this row of townhouses would not be directly behind our neighborhood. And this schematic shows it differently. It shows it right behind our neighborhood. And that's an issue.
Yeah, I was going to say the same, Pam. I also, Jason Fillion here, live directly behind where this row of townhouses would be. And similarly, the previous graphics I've seen showed a much bigger space between those townhomes and our homes. And I do agree with Lois, right? Like that area is overgrown. It hasn't been taken care of. There's probably some room for some really good development. And I think it makes sense for us to have some good proposals here. But in terms of what's been presented, I'm not a huge fan, especially with how close those are. I know a lot of us here in Kingstown on the back end, we bought our homes here so that we had some woods and a little bit of space. We understand where we live, so it's not like, we're expecting to be living in Manassas. We would have bought some large units way out there and been good to go. But we do enjoy the privacy, and we've had issues too with people using our back area a lot for foot traffic, and that would be a worry of mine as well. The increased foot traffic we would see from unknown people coming through our yard as well as backing through our property, which we already see without this housing density behind us.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Pam. I will just note that this is, a concept plan, and especially at an SSPA level, I like to think of this almost as a back of the napkin drawing, so to speak. So certainly, this is not a layout that, there's not final by any means. It's certain things here will likely change if this moves forward, because there's going to be a whole, whole portion of the review on design and layout and things of that nature. So, I would not be too concerned at this level with the actual layout of the development, but it is just one concept to show that this, what the nominator is proposing could be feasible from what they've demonstrated. So, but again, it's just concept. But
Sure, Ryan.
to your point on the, yeah.
So I thought I could chime in as well. You're
Perfect.
absolutely right on that. This is a concept level drawing to show one option, but there's two
Yeah.
other things I think I can address. Some of these comments, at least to a certain extent, is things that we took into consideration when doing this concept layout, and we continue to take into consideration on any future layouts, is the setbacks to the surrounding neighborhoods. So I wasn't quite clear on which neighborhood the commenters were saying they live in, but I do know the townhomes to the north, which is planned right in this view. When we were placing the stick of proposed townhomes, we were trying to, at least adhere to the setbacks that existed on their side of the property line. So you can't really see it here, but we are showing about 56 feet, I believe, from property line to the backside of those 2 rows of
66.
townhome buildings, which is a little bit more than the existing setback on the townhouse that exist on Plan Right. And on the east side of this site, which is at the bottom of the page here, if you're familiar with the area, there's a power lines that run through there. You can't really see them in this area, in this aerial. But one of the things that it's important to us as well is to maintain some mature tree canopy between the backs of these single family homes and the power lines. There's mature trees on the site, and we believe that there's going to be enough of a buffer between the limits of disturbance of the development and the power lines to preserve some of those trees. We want to do that for the benefit of the proposed community and for the benefit of the existing community. Shielding these homes from the power lines will definitely add to the community.
Let me
Great,
add
thanks,
one.
Robbie.
Let me add
Go
one
ahead, Kim.
follow comment, and that is we continue to develop on top of development without addressing the traffic and infrastructure needs, particularly along the Beulah corridor. And that's just a problem. We're not going to be able to get down the street.
I guess I'm just going to kind of reiterate what's been said in that if this does move forward, we will definitely have to have a traffic analysis done. We would have to, look at this, look at other communities planned in the area and make the appropriate improvements. So we haven't gotten to that step yet, but we certainly will with a thorough examination of traffic.
Great, thank you, Lynn. Let's see, unless we have any further comments, I think we can go ahead and move on to the next nomination. I appreciate everyone who's participated so far. And of course, we'll have the discussion here at the end of the presentation as well. But moving on here, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Leah to talk to us about the first Mount Vernon nomination of the evening.
Ryan. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So for the next 2 nominations, we're going to be jumping over to the Mount Vernon district. And so the first one is, for south of the county. This nominated site consists of several separate parcels located along Pohick Road, which currently consists of wooded land. The adopted comprehensive plan language is within the Lower Potomac, Lorton South Route 1 planning sector, specifically land unit E12, which is a large land unit. So residential uses range from 2 to 3, 5 to 8, and 8 to 12 dwelling units per acre. And then just to note that this subject property is located just outside of an ongoing Lorton planning study, which is evaluating new land uses and densities for core area just south of the nomination. Next slide, please. Ryan, can you jump to the next slide? Perfect, thank you. So the nominator is requesting to increase the residential intensity to allow up to 200 multifamily units, which is shown there in yellow, along with 8 single-family detached houses along Pohick Road, which are shown in purple. So the nomination proposes preserving the remaining approximately 30 acres of open space, which is majority of the area north of Landgraf Street. And this does consist of wooded land, but just to note that it is impacted by resource protection area and floodplain, which is highlighted in green and blue as well. And so some of the preliminary staff considerations acknowledges the lack of compatible transition in scale with that multifamily unit and building heights, as well as the landscape buffers to the Pohick Estates neighborhood just south of that site. And so the proposed multifamily use would be constrained also by steep slopes that's located within the area, and then some transportation access challenges, possibly onto LaGrange Street and Pohick Road. And then the nomination also appears to be encroaching into the resource protection area, which is highlighted in green outline, and is also next to other environmentally sensitive land. So this does raise for some critical environmental policy conflicts. And then, staff also acknowledges that there's going to be noise generated by being near I-95 as well as the CSX railroad, which may be challenging to mitigate. And then the proposed single-family homes located along the wooded strip are located in kind of a disconnected manner. And so that's also kind of, part of staff's considerations when looking at this from a high-level point of view. But I'm going to pass it on to the nominators to talk more specifically about their proposal.
Very good. Thank you very much, Leah. My name is Clark Massey with Tetra Corporation. On the phone with me is John Regan, who is president of and owner of the Christopher Companies, a firm that's been in business for 50 years. They've built over 6,000 housing units. They're currently building in Virginia as well as Delaware and Maryland. If you could pull up the first exhibit, one that there. Okay, no, back to the other one that you just had there. Let it. All right, if we can, and also on the phone, by the way, is Dave McElhaney of Urban Engineering, who is the engineer on this. I think this may help a little bit better to try and describe the site. As Leah mentioned, it's a total of 6 sites. It's located at the southeast quadrant of Pohick Road and Route 95. It's about a half mile north of the Virginia Rail Express station. Again, if we can go back to that exhibit. Oh, no, the one before. There, okay. If we could keep that up on the screen, about 49.5 acres in total. There's approximately 15 acres that is zoned I-4. That's towards the upper portion of your screen. I-4 is a medium intensity industrial zoning. There is approximately 8.5 acres of R3, which stands for residential, 3 dwelling units per acre. And approximately 26 acres of R1, which is residential, developed at a density of 1 dwelling units per acre. And that's split between approximately 5.5 acres along Pohick Road, as well as the other R1 ground is located towards the back of the Pohick estates. As it relates to the proposal, there's, in broad strokes, there's 3 basic aspects to it. We're asking that the I-4 portion of the property can be developed as multifamily. The R1 portion of the property along Pohick Road could be developed as single-family residential with lots in size compatible with Pohick Estates. And the third is the dedicating of the large R1 piece of property that contains the existing Acatink Stream Valley, that it would be preserved as open space. going back to the other proposal that you had, or the other plan that was in color, if we can go to that. There, okay. So you can see in purple are the single families, and it is, the staff had commented about somewhat the disjointed nature of it. What the thought process is that, as you can see, all of that ground fronts on to Pohick Road. We realize that having multiple driveway entries onto Pohick Road would not be desirable. Therefore, we are basically placing most of the lots, as I would call them, end caps to the streets. So going from the lower portion of the site forward, what they're proposing is 2 lots on what is called Cullen Street. There would be 3 lots on Cullen Drive. It's difficult to see, but the 3 lots on the upper side face actually onto Cullen Drive. So the proposal is that those lots will be accessed off of Cullen Drive. The other 2 lots on Poland Street, which is the next intersection up, and then there would be 1 lot at LaGrange. So the intent is that all of these lots would have access not onto Pohick Road, but onto any of those streets that I just mentioned to you. And they would be either an R3 or a PDH3, which is compatible in terms of lot size with the existing Pohick estates. The northern portion of the site, as you can see, is the location of a proposed building, and that is where we are envisioning the multifamily building. I believe that we've got a slide that is showing an elevation of that. No, there, okay. So again, this is all a concept aspect, but it's important, we feel, to be able to give a visual presentation for understanding purposes of everyone looking at it. What this is envisioning is a total of 186 multifamily units. It would be 6 stories above grade, if you will, 2 levels of underground parking. You can see to the left side is basically where Pohick Road would be. This is view is somewhat from Pohick Road, almost, if you will, at the intersection of LaGrange. Staff has raised different issues, as has been highlighted. Some of those issues that they have identified are steep slopes, potentially problematic Marumsco soils, lack of compatible transition in scale and building height, and encroachment into the RPA areas. I think, though, that it's important to point out that some of these items, specifically steep slopes, the potential problem soils, as well as the access issues onto Pohick Road in LaGrange, is an existing condition that is affecting the current by right I-4 zoning that already is in existence. So the way that we have tried to address on some of these, the steep slopes, we are envisioning of underground parking to be able to shore up and almost create like a retaining wall, if you will, to Pohick Road. The problem soils that is there, I believe that we have an exhibit of the soil conditions in that area. There we are. So you can see kind of the brown area. Those are all these Marumsco soils that the staff has referenced. It does extend, you'll see that almost all of the lots within Pohick Estates have that same soil condition. And then just to the north of it is the I-4 portion of the property that we're envisioning of doing the multifamily. It should be, and then they've talked about the transition and scaling of building height. Within the I-4 zoning, by right, a building can be as tall as 75 feet. In terms of FAR, which you've heard mentioned a couple of different times, based upon the amount of ground that is zoned R, the I-4 and at a 0.50 density, that's approximately 325,000 square feet of space that can be developed. And I say that's based upon the current zoning of the property. And uses that are permitted in the I-4, just as to give you a brief example, would be such things permitted by right, like a crematory, funeral home, health and exercise, warehouse facilities. Those are all, quote, permitted uses. They had mentioned about the encroachment into the RPA, and I believe that we have another one of those slides that is showing the back one slide before, if you will. No. Keep going. Sorry about this. No. Next slide.
Sorry, we'll get there. I am looking for the RPA slide here. I don't
That's
see
all
it
right
in the slide deck, but
no.
That's not it. We
There,
have this
okay,
slide.
all right.
Okay,
Number
that's what you're looking for.
number one, let's focus on that. Okay, this to give you a base for comparison, or you'll see some different colors of lines. And we've actually had this map. The RPA area is actually mapped, but on this drawing that you see there, the purple area is actually the limits of the existing wetlands for the site. The blue area or line is the draft FEMA line. The red is what the county is showing as the RPA. The green is actually the field verified RPA. So you will notice that the configuration of the proposed building, in fact, is to be able to take into consideration where the line is of the RPA. So based upon the old red line, which is the county's line, that would show that we are encroaching into the RPA. In fact, we are not. It's mentioned, staff has also mentioned about the challenges of access onto Pohick Road as well as LaGrange Street. And we totally agree. The traffic is certainly an issue. And also we realize that this has been noted also by the Pohick State Civic Association. They mentioned of the concerns regarding traffic. They've mentioned about concerns with overflow parking and pedestrian safety are three of the key items that they've mentioned. So we have made commitments with an earlier discussion that we've had with the surrounding community to actually go ahead and conduct a traffic impact analysis. And you'll notice that that has been mentioned on the other two nominations before that, the need to try and have that done. We are hopeful then to be able to have more factual data on which to make decisions with, but we have committed to either perform work or contribute to work to try and aid some of these issues. As an example, if you look in terms of slide 4 that is there is currently a gas line that goes underneath Pohick Road, more or less showing of where lot 2 on that diagram on lot 4 is located. And that's creating a little bit of a hump in the road on Pohick Road, making it difficult for a sight distance as cars are coming up north on Pohick Road. What we have proposed that we will do is do an investigative work and find out that if the gas line is low enough that we may be able to go ahead and shave off Pohick Road, drop it at that location to improve the sight distance. Another item that has been talked about is the traffic that gets bottlenecked with traffic going up Pohick Road and trying to turn to any of the streets on the left. So what we've proposed there is to try and do what I would call turnouts, which are slight areas to go around those the congestion areas that is there to be able to try and help the flow of traffic. We've also talked about with VDOT's approval, and if we can demonstrate it, of installing a traffic light at LaGrange and Pohick Road. Again, that is a final determinant by VDOT, But our hope is that with conducting the traffic study, that we would be able to find that that is warranted. So, and also we have talked, and it's been mentioned as suggestions by the Pohick State Civic Association to install sidewalk from our multifamily along Pohick Road to allow pedestrian traffic to walk down to the Lorton Station Boulevard and then to be able to cross at that light. So in conclusion, we feel that the multifamily residential is more compatible with the existing single-family residential of Pohick Estates than would otherwise be the case if the site were developed by right as an industrial use. We feel that the proposed 8 single-family lots would be compatible in size with Pohick Estates. We feel that the dedication of the 30 acres would help to allow the county or the park authority to control the preservation of the Accotink Stream Valley and allow connecting from the existing parcels owned by the park authority. It would also assist on improvements to Pohick Road, and it would provide the citizenry an opportunity to have input on the future development of what is otherwise the I-4 portion, which is only available if it's going through a legislative approval process. I'll be happy to answer any questions or throw it out to John Regan or to Dave McElhaney if I've missed anything.
Hi, this is John Regan from the Christopher Companies. I'm going to just expand a little bit on some of the things. When we met with the citizens, we met with the land use or the envisioning of Lorton. Pohick Road has multiple problems that is currently existence. I think that we can help in about at least 3 to 4 of these locations. One, the site distance down is on the 4th drawing right there. Some of the citizens said that the street is too narrow. Totally 100% agree with them. If we did lots 2 through 5, we most likely on that screen right there, we would probably widen that street out to what currently is the standard size of a public street that is not up to public street standards. On the multifamily side of it, that the shot of the elevation, we're trying to show the elevation. Some of the citizens in Pohick Estates, mentioned that that's an overwhelming building. Most of the building, from the bottom of that property to Pohick Road, there's about a 30-foot differential. One of the corrections I have to tell, we're going to have on the parking garage area, we are going to have there's going to be 2.5 decks of parking garage, which would pick up the distance between the bottom of that area to be almost even with Pohick Road. It would look or feel like a taller building due to the fact that part of the building on the, let's say, park side of it would be picking up some of the units so they can overlook nature and stuff like that. In the chat room, there was some question about how close we are to 95. The edge of that building closest to 95 is more than 200 feet. The building is set off by a regulatory item that the building's not going to be any closer than 200 feet from the rail line. So we are right now, that building is set off of that area. And we would also put some landscaping along where the Pohick Road, Pohick citizens, so that they're not looking at that building. We understand that being in a single family house and being a couple, 100 feet or more, a little bit more than 100 feet away from that backyard of that single family house, we want to make sure that we put some landscaping so that they live like the way they wanted to live, and we would be blocking most of that with landscaping in that area. Dave, anything I did miss on that or missed on that area?
No, you and Clark captured it, everything. So I'll let the questions be generated and we can respond as appropriate.
Thanks. Thanks, John, also for answering some of the questions that we received in the comments. But this is the time to raise your hand if you'd like to ask questions. I see Andrew, your hand's up.
Okay, take a second to mute or unmute. Yeah, okay.
Were you the one that wrote the
the
letter, Andrew?
Yes, I did.
Thank you for we agree with a lot of your comments. Some of them we don't, but
okay. Well, I just want to bring it up to everybody else as well so that they're aware of it. Single family residence, 2 stories, which includes basements. So most of them over the years, I mean, most of them were 12 to 1,400 square feet. And then now beside that, we're going to be putting up a $1 million plus house that's in an area that is fairly narrow, restricting, taking away a lot of the nature, the natural, what do you call it, noise barrier. But again, our major concerns, as was said, was our, which you've got the cheat sheet there, traffic congestion. Now we currently have an issue with traffic on LaGrange. People coming out of there take quite a while to get in and out, and now I do have a question. One briefing we had was 186 units in the high rise. Another briefing was 200 units. Now we're back to 186. I'm not sure how many there are, but with our 200 unit high rise with a mixture of 50-50 single and 2-bedroom apartments, which are rental apartments, by the way. They're not something that somebody is going to buy and take care of. They're going to be renting from somebody else who's got to take care of them. But that's going to add an awful lot of traffic, no matter how you look at it, in addition to what's already somewhat overburdened. Now we, let's see, with the traffic jams that are there, people coming out of the new complex going to pull onto LaGrange Road, which is LaGrange Street, which is fairly close to Pohick Road, which is where their entrance would be, which would mean that they're going to come out into an existing traffic jam and they're going to get used to it and they're going to turn and try to go up Sylvania Road, which can't handle it.
Put up the tax map thing for him.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to ask for that.
There you
go. I'd prefer the previous one. There we go. Okay. If you draw a line roughly, no. Go to the other one. Okay, right here. If you draw a line from the center of the R1 section, kind of that.
What plate are we on? Picture
back to the one we were on, please. Anyway, if you draw a line roughly 50% of the way down Sylvania, diagonally up to LaGrange where it bends around, there we go. If you see that red line at the bottom of LaGrange, right at the curve, you draw a line from there up to about, maybe halfway down the area that is shaded in for R1. I figured about 50% of those people are going to go out to LaGrange. I counted their houses. There's roughly 100 houses. So we're going to have roughly 100 cars going out of LaGrange from there alone. Now we've got other people on the other side, and they're going to come out. Bottom line is, it's just going to, going to traffic tie-ups. People are going to get frustrated, and then it also carries over to the school bus system. But anyway, it's going to be difficult if you get in there to try to do something, to try to build that building. Now you say it's 6 stories high. It's going to be overlooking our community, no matter how you look at it. But we also have a, let's see, getting a little bit off track here. You're coming out, school bus, overflow parking. Now, you say you're going to have underground parking, and there's no way you're going to stop it. If you drive anywhere down the street where there's a townhouse complex, they're parking on the main, or they're parking on Pohick Road, or they're parking on Albin Road. It's lined solid. So I'm positive that will end up happening here, unless you put in about 300 parking spaces underground. Now
Yes, sir. Totally agree.
I said to use an adequate number. That's difficult to determine what adequate is. The only way I could say that is say with about 3 cars per unit, roughly. Now, safety, as I said, there is no way to get from Grange up to Sherwood, the traffic light that's right up the street. I've actually watched, matter of fact, I've walked it, pressed the button, walked across the street, walked right into the wood line. Well, if you turn left and crawl through the woods a little ways, you come across a power line. So that power line is going to impact somewhat on that new home that you're planning on putting on the south side of LaGrange. Now, another thing that this high rise is going to do is, I'm sure it's going to put a strain on existing utilities, existing services such as fire, ambulance, the police. We can't even man the new building, new fire house or the police station for Lorton area. And the current firehouse does not have to the best of my knowledge, does not have a ladder truck. It'll get up to the 5th or 6th story. So there are a lot of safety concerns that the sidewalk itself is not going to take care of. The utilities, we have problems with power outages all the time. The electric company is getting better. They are working on it, but things happen. And now we're going to put in 208 customers, in addition to the 260 plus that are already in my community. It's bound to have an effect on the power draw, the water pressure. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much they can expand and still maintain existing water pressure. The police, the fire, the utilities, sewage. The lower end of LaGrange has had problems in the past of I say sewage, not just sewage, but drainage in general. The, what do you call it, stormwater drains have had floods. So now we have 208 more units, adding more to that. And it's just gonna overwhelm everything. Ecological impact, that I-4 area, that whole area down in there is supposedly, to the best of my knowledge, a very sensitive area for building. Now, when you talk about green space, yeah, there's a lot of green space you're leaving out there, but there ain't nothing you can do with it because we can't get to it, even if it's green space, as far as making it kind of public access or putting paths or trails in there. There's only one access if you can, two short accesses, those little red lines that venture into our community. And they're marked off, they're locked off with a gate. I mean, there's a gate with a lock on it. And once you get back, and I've walked that area, having come down the railroad tracks and come into that area to try to get into the community. And it's not a pedestrian friendly area. So saying it's green space and having public access and all this bit is not really gonna carry much weight, to the best of my estimation. Potential.
Just to be time conscious, we did receive your letter and thank you for stating everything too. If you could just maybe say your last couple of comments so that we can get to anybody else who'd like to comment.
Okay, well, we have the school system. You estimated 28 school children, with 200 people, 200 units. I would think there's going to be more than 28, but still, that's more school buses, more traffic because people drive their kids to school. Parents pick up or drive their kids to the school bus stops, and the school buses come in. So again, they're all going to congregate in that area up in and around where the high rise is. I don't know where the school bus stop will be, but if the school bus goes into the high rise area, comes back out, they're almost spanning the entire distance between Pohick Road and the driveway. Again, adding traffic issues and safety issues with the kids around the school bus stops. Now, one other thing, potential for increased crime and litter. Now, you can't project that very well. You can only kind of guess at it with 200 units that are rental units, people don't own. Right now, we have 260 plus proud homeowners that try to take care of their own traffic, their own yards, their own they police their own area. Now, the police reports that I receive daily show about 1 in every 3 or 4 or 5 months incident within our community. And those incidents are basically generally domestic arguments. So the police come down, okay, settle down, husband and wife, shake hands, and everything's fine. We don't have any crime. With 200 more units, more people, there's a good possibility that more things are going to occur in our community. There is litter. The people driving in and out, they throw the trash at the entrances to our community. Now we got more people driving in and out. We got more construction service vehicles that are coming in to service those new buildings. There's a higher probability we're going to get more trash and more litter. Now, the 8 houses that are being shown as, well, not all 8 coming out onto the exit streets. There's one coming out onto LaGrange. Again, that's going to be coming right across the street from the entrance to the high rise. And again, it's going to be very close to, he may not be able to make a left turn to get onto LaGrange. We've got the two on Pollen Street. Same thing there. They're going to come out within, I don't have the estimate of the distance, but those areas there are very, very short. They're going to be pulling out into traffic, coming up the hill and turning onto Pollen. Now, going down to Cullum Street, there's one house on the south end of Cullum. That one is going to be coming out onto Cullum as well. And Cullum itself is not a super wide street. People turning in off of Pohick Road onto Cullum tend to cut wide. And as they turn right, they actually go into the left-hand lane. If they're coming south on Pohick Road and they're turning left to go into it, they tend to pull into the right-hand lane, and where people are already parked along those roads. And you're going to have somebody pulling onto that road a very short distance from the intersection of Pohick and Cullum. Now, the four that are, well, actually, there's a change in the plan here that I heard tonight. The one on the north side of Cullum Road, or Cullum Street, is
Mr.
now
Normand,
being proposed
Mr.
to come out
Normand,
onto Cullum.
Mr. Normand,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to, we have one more proposal for this evening, that
Okay.
we need to, that needs to be heard. And I know that you had submitted your comments in writing, and I don't mean to cut you off. Thank you very much
Well,
for all of your comments. We really, really appreciate
let
them.
me say one last thing
Okay.
here. Before you go any further in making any kind of decisions, I would honestly request that you come out and physically walk this ground. I've had South County come out and look at it, and they just shook their head and said, I don't know. Because looking at a chart, oh yeah, that looks okay, yeah, that looks okay, but if you don't walk the ground, you're not really going to have an appreciation as to the distances and the problems. So I will end my discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I don't know how
Andrew.
to lower my hand.
Thank
There we
you
go.
for a lot
I
of those
kept hitting
comments.
the hand button and it wouldn't go away.
No problem.
Can I, Leila, and let me have at least, I'll run really quick.
Okay.
I will do it really quickly. Services under Fairfax County, and Leila and the rest are members of Fairfax County, government. If we impact sanitary, sewer, storm, your electrical and water services, we have to demonstrate that we're not going to adversely affect your properties or the community. So these will be studied during the time that if this moves forward, definitely. Public access to the park area, the I-4 area, that's part of the planning area part of it. We would probably put in a trail that comes off of LaGrange or some other, like, I don't think I would, those two little spike strip access points, I would not want to be either one of the, either one of those four homeowners that would have some little trail cutting through there. That would be, that would be a problem. This is going to be the most of this building is going to be parking garage, which is going to be below any visual area. The parts that's going to be this building is a 5-story wood constructed building that is going to be on top of or part of a parking on top of the parking garage. So above surface, like above Pohick Road, would probably be 4.5 stories, or about like you said you had 2-story buildings. That's usually about, each story is usually about 10 feet, which is 20 feet if you're doing that. So that would mean that our building would be about 40 feet. So the difference would be about 22 feet difference between the two. Taking in that part of the building would be suppressed in the ground. This building would be owned by one owner, and in terms of crime and litter, as a single owner, or probably one of the people you're talking about, the people that would be owning this building, we would have a ground crew that would make sure it works on site. We would have on-site personnel that would make sure that it's cleaned up. There won't be trash and things like that. A lot of our job sites, if you'd like to go see one of our other sites, you can go to Stonefield in Charlottesville. I think you'll agree that that is well taken care of. In terms of crime, there's crime everywhere. I don't think anybody thought about somebody being shot and arrested and working out. So that part, people renting does not mean criminals. These people are vetted. Most of the citizens who would be renting from this piece of property or on this piece of property would be young professionals. Most likely some kids that are living with their parents that would like to, live on their own. Also, some people that would go to Fort Belvoir. I think a lot of people that would be in this area would be going to the fort. So there's a lot of those are either medical personnel or engineers. I think we have some good people there. Yes, this property has some problems. Be more than happy to have people walk on the site, and I look forward to working with Andrew, with your group, and make the project a lot better for everyone. So I look forward to the next step.
Since we're already hitting 9 o'clock, I think we're going to go to the next nomination, but we're having great
Thank you.
conversations in the chat, and we'll have record of that. And thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan, if you could move on to the next one.
Yeah, I apologize, everyone. There
This is
seems to
gonna
be a
be,
little bit of
the
a
last
lag
nomination
in
for
our
tonight.
slide presentation, but just bear with us. It should show up here momentarily.
Thanks, Ryan. So this is the last nomination that we're going to go over tonight, also within the Mount Vernon district. So this site consists of 2 parcels located at the southeast corner of the intersection of Lowersville Road and Newington Road, and this currently contains wooded land. The property is currently planned for industrial use up to intensity of 0.35 for area ratio, which is the base plan for majority of land unit K, with the which is part of the I-95 corridor industrial area. Next slide, please. The nominator is proposing the development of hotel and self-storage uses on the subject property at an intensity of 0.7 floor area ratio. The nominator subdivided the property into 2 parcels and is pursuing a by right site plan approval for a 2-story self-storage facility, which is located to the left. And then abutting the self-storage facility, the nominee is proposing a hotel consisting of 175 rooms, approaching 7 stories in height. And the primary access to the hotel would be via Terminal Road, which is to the south. But visitors would also be able to utilize a right turn entrance onto Newington Road, which does generate high traffic. And then the concept plan shows ingress only access along Newington Road and full access off the Terminal Road cul-de-sac. Next slide. So majority of the preliminary staff considerations are consistent with the 2018 plan amendment that the Board of Supervisors authorized staff to consider. And they authorize staff to consider a hotel, restaurant, and self-storage use up to intensity of 0.7 floor area ratio. along with access options from Lowersdale Road, Newington Road, and Terminal Road. Ultimately, staff didn't support the adoption of that plan amendment due to incompatibility between uses found in the industrial area, as well as fundamental conflict with the primary objective of the I-95 corridor industrial area, as well as the introduction of higher trip generating uses with primary access to Terminal Road, which would further exacerbate existing operational deficiencies in the local transportation network. And then there are significant site grading that would result in impacts to the environment. And so within the 2018 plan amendment, the nominator at that time did end up withdrawing their plan amendment proposal before it went to Planning Commission or the board. So what you're seeing here tonight is the 2025 nomination, which removed the restaurant use. But staff still acknowledged that the proposed hotel use presents the same fundamental land use concerns in the 2018 plan amendment, as there are limited undeveloped industrial non-accommodate a planned extension of Terminal Road that was adopted as part of the 2023 new transportation recommendations as part of the Fairfax County Parkway planning study in order to so those are some of the preliminary staff considerations at a high level when we initially looked at this nomination. I'm going to now pass it on to the nominators to go a little bit more in detail.
All right, thank you very much, Leah. Good evening. My name is Andrew Painter. I'm a zoning attorney at the law firm of Walsh Colucci, speaking tonight on behalf of the nominator, which is Excel Holdings 12 LLC. Excel is a private equity firm that acquires and develops commercial and industrial properties, as well as premium limited service hotels and real estate. They have 43 assets in the Mid-Atlantic, about a little over 5,300 hotel keys, predominantly with Hilton, Marriott, and Hyatt. What this nomination is about, as Leah mentioned, is about whether it is preferable to have the balance of this property develop as a matter of right with I-4 uses at a 0.5 FAR, which would not be subject to a discretionary public review process, or whether as an alternative to the site's industrial use, consideration of an appropriately sized hotel might make sense if it meant that the use would be subject to community review and input on things like height and density and architectural design, lighting, traffic, and environmental sustainability. If we can go to the next slide. As Leah mentioned, this site is zoned to the I-4 zoning district. It is not subject to any prior rezoning or development conditions or proffers. Half of the site, and it's 2 parcels, but the western half of the property is subject to a site plan for a by right self-storage facility, as Leah mentioned. And ownership is now trying to determine what to do with the other half. The property itself is about 6.38 acres. Again, under the I-4 district, you can go up to a 0.5 floor area ratio as a matter of right, or you can seek a special exception to increase that up to a 0.7 floor area ratio. We can go to the next slide. These are just images. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, and for the sake of brevity. But yeah, I think we all know where this property is. What you're looking at on the upper image towards the right is the 1-lane underpass under the CSX rail lines. This is at the intersection of Newington and Loisdale Road. You can see on the right-hand side where the van is, in the upper left-hand corner, where the Wendy's parking lot and the VIP Nails and the barbershop is located. Lower image is Terminal Road. This is the cul-de-sac at the end of Terminal, which then takes you out to the Fairfax County Parkway, where there's a full signalized intersection. So this is the other side of the property. If we can go to the next slide. And then there's 2 other images. I think most of us know the Parkway Express gas station, which is right at Loisdale and Fairfax County Parkway. And then, of course, the Embassy Suites, which is catty-corner to this site, which is a hotel use at Loisdale. Go ahead. Next slide, please. And this shows the position of the property within the I-95 corridor industrial area. You can see it's right at the or near the interchange of the Parkway and Newington and Loisdale. It is adjacent to properties that are planned for retail uses. Again, that being the Parkway Express gas station, the Wendy's, and the Embassy Suites. We can go to the next slide. This is the existing comprehensive plan text, and to summarize, it's basically planned for continuation of the existing industrial uses up to a 0.35 FAR at the baseline as a baseline recommendation. So this is one of the unique places in the county where the comprehensive plan actually plans for lower intensity uses than the underlying zoning, the underlying I-4 zoning. As I mentioned, the underlying I-4 zoning allows a series of industrial uses up to a 0.5 FAR by right or 0.7 by special exception. We go to the next slide. As staff mentioned, Excel filed a plan amendment and special exception application back in the 2018-2019 timeframe to allow for a 160-room hotel, a standalone 10,000 square foot pad site restaurant, and an approximately 80,000 square foot self-storage facility. The special exception, that was the plan amendment nomination. The companion special exception would have permitted the hotel and restaurant uses and then increased the maximum intensity from 0.5 FAR to a 0.7 FAR. Staff, as Leah mentioned, had some of the same concerns they have with the current nomination, such as the potential loss of industrial ground in the county, particularly since this is an undeveloped site, and then also the compatibility of the restaurant and hotel use in an industrial district. What's important to note here, and this is perhaps the biggest issue that was associated with it from what we can tell, the prior nomination proposed access along Loisdale Road and along Newington Road with secondary access to Terminal Road. And so that took up a lot of time and concern from the community because, especially with traffic along Loisdale Road, and then concerns about traffic coming from the site going down through Newington Road to access Telegraph Road and Fort Belvoir. The concern really was that, if you're going to have a use on the site, it should go out Terminal Road at the bottom of the screen, which then takes you out to the signalized intersection of Fairfax County Parkway so that there's not traffic coming from this site on Loisdale or Newington. If we can go to the next slide, please. So these were some of the comments that were received from the community. Again, no objection to the hotel use, really, no objection to the self-storage. There was a concern about architecture, making sure that the architecture for the hotel and the self-storage facility were kind of, that they were matching. There was a concern primarily about the restaurant use and the amount of trips generated from that. There was also a concern raised with the Embassy Suites with its large conference facilities about what happens when there's overflow parking, that they park out along Loisdale Road. There's not enough parking on the Embassy Suites site. There was strong opposition, as I mentioned, to the access along Loisdale and on Newington. There was muted or no opposition to the right and only along Loisdale Road or Newington Road, but nobody wanted any traffic leaving this site going out onto either one of those roads. And there was certainly a preference to ingress and egress predominantly along Terminal Road. We can go to the next slide, please. So based upon that, Excel withdrew its plan amendment and it withdrew its special exception. It got the message, pretty clearly that, that combination of uses was going to generate too much traffic, and especially the access points just weren't going to work. So it went back to the drawing board. It is an asset, and Excel was looking to figure out what to do with the property. And given that the community was not interested in entertaining a plan amendment at the time, it started looking for by right uses under its existing I-4 district. It has since pursued a by right site plan approval for the self-storage facility. The site plan includes ingress only access from Newington Road with a full access being provided along Loisdale Road. So you can see here, this is just a snippet from that site plan. So the western half of the property would be used for the self-storage facility. Then there would be a stormwater management pond, and above that there's a pad. And the question, really is what to do with the remainder of the property. So the by right uses that are available under the I-4 district include things like light utility substations, data centers, financial institutions, vehicle transportation service, freight distribution hubs. There's a variety of uses to which this property could be put. At the same time, Excel does believe that a high quality hotel use maybe warrant reconsideration, just given the strong market demand from Fort Belvoir and the U.S. Army Museum and its prime location along I-95 and at the Fairfax County Parkway intersection. Hotels, Excel believes have proven to be compatible with industrial uses. I would note that hotels are not, this is not proposing a rezoning. The underlying zoning would remain I-4, and hotels are allowable special exception uses in the I-4 district. And special exception uses are uses that are potentially compatible with the underlying by right uses, assuming certain conditions are met and mitigations are made. So with that, we've come back proposing a slightly revised proposal from what occurred or for what was proposed back in 2019. If we can go to the next slide. And so what Excel is proposing now would be a hotel with up to 175 rooms. And when combined with the self-storage facility that has already been approved, that would result in a total intensity of 0.7 FAR. There is no more restaurant being proposed, which was a high trip generating use. There would also be no convention space with this hotel. There would probably be a handful of small rooms, but no large conventions would be here. Of critical note, the predominant access is going to be on terminal. As I mentioned, the by right site plan for the self-storage facility shows a right-in only on Newington Road. But this is, I would just say too, that this is one iteration. As Mr. Stewart mentioned with an earlier nomination, it really is a concept plan. It can take any number of iterations, any number of designs. But the plan proposed, again, assumes a 0.70 FAR. But we could have very tightly worded plan text that reflects the proposed use and the limitations that are expected by the community. And after the plan amendment process, if this were accepted, it would be, this project would be subject to an entirely separate special exception process with additional hearings and community input and development conditions. And so all those issues that we discussed up front would have to be evaluated through a separate process. So with that, I'm going to pause and be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Andrew. I see one hand up, Elaine.
Hey, I just want to say, because I saw this come up on this work plan, is that I don't understand a hotel at all. We just had a meeting a couple months ago for the Springfield CBC area, which is just one exit up the road. And we're told that they could not make a hotel work that had already been approved. And so we had to put in apartments. The Planning Commission was not comfortable with those apartments going in there versus a hotel because of the noise and air pollution from the highway, but they did okay it in the end. But I don't understand how they can say there's no market and then one exit down in an area where there's not going to be anything for these people to get to easily. Because up at the CBC, there's grocery stores, there's restaurants, everything's walkable. Why this makes any sense at all? My 2 bits.
Yeah, thank you for that. And the only thing I would say is that each submarket is different. The Embassy Suites has performed phenomenally well at this intersection or the interchange here. There's one hotel that's further south of the Lorton interchange. And then there's, of course, a series of, a couple of hotels in Springfield. Each of them are flagged differently. Each of them are different star hotel classes. So it really just depends upon the underwriting, the finances, and the types of hotels that would want to locate here.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
If I may, my name is Matt Wexler. I'm a principal with Excel Group. We're a hotel-focused investment and development firm, and we have ties to the Springfield community as the longtime owner of the Courtyard Marriott Hotel near the Springfield Town Center, and we have pretty extensive hotel development experience, including several projects in the Washington, D.C. area.
When I get
Can somebody please mute Andrew?
I can't get all of one or all the other. I get a mix. So
thank you. And so while I'm not familiar with the other project that you talked about, we're very familiar with the demand in and around Springfield. Again, we've owned the Courtyard for many years, and would be happy to take more time with and discuss why we think this would be a good use for the site.
Okay, thank you. I don't see, I see questions about the underpass. There is part of the CSX railroad expansion. They are looking to convert that 1-lane underpass to 2 lanes. I'm not exactly sure of the status on that, and I can, get back to people on that. Let's see, I'm trying to look at other comments that have been in here. See, I think maybe we'll have time for one more person. Gregory, I see your hand is up.
Sure. Sure. Thank you very much. Hi, Matt and Andrew and
Hey.
everyone. Good to see you again. Thank you for the presentation. I am curious. So just at a preliminary view, the justification for this is that there's a market demand in the area. Not much evidence for that provided. So we did a brief analysis. There's about 17 hotels within a 15-minute drive, approximately 10 or 11, depending on what qualifies, within a 10-minute drive of this location. So I think aside from the obvious concerns that this area is highly congested, it's been described as extremely dangerous by Fairfax County for pedestrians and bicyclists in 2015 in a staff report. Aside from those issues, which obviously are pressing for the community and don't really provide this doesn't really provide many benefits for the community, really just danger and traffic. I mean, how is this justified if there's 17 other options a short drive away, that we need another hotel here? And you cite, the Army Museum. I'd be curious to see, visits in terms of actual count of visits, daily visits there. Every time I've gone there's been about 5 cars there, and and it's a great museum. Don't get me wrong. I just curious about some of the empirical evidence you're providing for this justification and the negative impact it would have on the community. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm not sure, Matt, if you want to try to address that again. It seemed to be the same comment as earlier as far as market demand.
Sure. I mean, Gregory, frankly, if we didn't see market demand, we wouldn't be here, before, you and the community. We do believe that an upscale hotel is one that, is not only, well served in terms of what the market, could use at this location, but also be an amenity to the community as opposed to a noxious site, and one that we would hope that community members could get behind. But we only really want to do this if there's a collaborative dialogue and an interest in making this happen. Otherwise, as Andrew has hinted at, we'll pursue other buy right options. But we are very active in the hotel market in the Washington, D.C. area, in Fairfax County, in Springfield already. So it's not as if we are making up our own analysis to come before you to pretend like we don't think there's demand for a hotel, when we believe it would be a good use for the site, as well as one that would be reasonably compatible with a couple of the other core commercial uses, right, in this kind of gateway to Newington, the Embassy Suites being one, and Fairwinds Brewery being another.
Thank you. And the impact on the community traffic congestion?
Well, we haven't done a full analysis of the traffic congestion. I think the biggest issue, or the biggest improvement from the 2019 proposal, is that we are not proposing right out or left out access along Newington or on Loisdale. So everything would be routed through Fairfax County Parkway.
I'll just note that the schematic you provided actually does indicate entry exit, even though you described it as ingress only. That's just on your plan that you provided. If you zoom in really closely, it says entry exit. I don't know if that's an error on your side or something else, but I will note that it would be, I'm not sure you'd be able to actually stop people from leaving that area to go on Newington Road. Moreover, it would generate general traffic aside from that particular egress.
Yeah, if that's, just to make it clear, we are not proposing egress from the site on Newington or Loisdale.
It's in the plan, so I just did a screenshot and put it in the chat.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we'll correct that if it's unclear.
Okay, we have one more hand up and this will be the last person, and then I think we're gonna move on from there. And thank you everyone so much for the comments and chat so far. We'll take the last person, Trey.
So I just want to say that I hope that you guys keep the same energy with saying that if this isn't something that the community is wanting or backing, then you'll kind of back down on this proposal. Because just looking through the chat, and I hope you guys take the time to read it, there's not much, if anybody that is pro this plan. There's actually a lot of good comments and good points raised to why this would not work in our community. So I just want you to continue as we go through these different steps in the community engagement process. If the voices are more against it than in favor, then, as you said, not move forward with this hotel proposal. You mentioned that there were a lot of different other options for the second half of this property. So I don't know, maybe I suggest that you poll the community and the actual members that you're saying that you would like to benefit, and what from that list that we might actually be able to use and what actually might be able to work. Because you say that there's not going to be a influx in traffic on Loisdale or on Newington Road, but Fairfax County, we don't want any additional traffic on Fairfax County Parkway either, because those lights are backing up with traffic during rush hour times as well. So just would like you to, as some of these different comments have proposed, come view these sites, walk the sites during rush hour. Don't take the photos when there's no cars at the intersections. Actually get a active depiction on what these areas are, since you are saying that you guys are members of the Springfield community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just say, this is what we were hoping to be as a start of a dialogue. We did meet with Greg and other representatives from Newington Road Civic Association, from South County Federation, Newberry Station, Townhomes. And, we don't expect to have all the issues solved at this point tonight. We're really just looking at it from a high level conceptual perspective to see whether or not a hotel, if it was appropriately sized and they were correct, tight restrictions about the design and access, if something like that would be preferred over, like I said, by right I-4 use. So thank you very much for the comment.
Great, thank you. So that was the last nomination that we're going to go over tonight. Everything in the chat will get posted along with the video. And I think I'll just pass it to Ryan for next steps.
Great, thanks, Leah. So again, I want to reiterate what Leah just said. I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. I know it's been a long night, and I know we've gone through a lot of information, but it's been truly valuable having each of you participate in the chat and in your comments, and hearing from each of you on these various proposals. We will definitely, we have a lot to digest here in terms of what we've heard and what we've read in the chat. So this will certainly factor into our analysis going forward and our preparation for our Planning Commission workshops coming up next month. We will have the video and the chat transcript saved online for everyone to access. We'll provide a feedback of the summary to be able to post online as well. And then in terms of the next steps here, we've got some tentative dates coming up. Our Planning Commission workshops on May 1st, May 15th, May 22nd, and then a potential, what we call a markup or a Planning Commission this on June 5th coming up. And so those are dates to look forward to. Of course, those are subject to change, but we'll be able to post the current versions of the schedule on the website as soon as they're available. And then we have the Board of Supervisors reviewing the Planning Commission and staff recommendations, determining which nominations will ultimately be added to the work program, and then we'll have a decision from them later on that this summer. So again, I just want to thank each of you. We will remain on the line here for a little bit longer in case there are any questions that you may have thought of in the course of the meeting. And of course, we've got our contact information for myself and Leah here. If you want to contact us directly on any of these proposals, we'll be happy to answer any questions, take any comments by email or phone as well. So again, thank you. And with that, I will remain here. But we very much appreciate your participation and your time this evening, and look forward to you seeing you again in the process as we move forward. I see we've got a question here in the chat about, is there a place to sign up to be notified of county meetings of interest? Yes, there's a place where if you go on our SSPA website, the best way to Google that is Fairfax County SSPA 2025, and it should show up. There's an option there where you can fill out a text box to be notified of future events and future meetings, things of that nature. And of course, if you contact me directly or contact Leah, we'll add you to the mailing list as well if you're more comfortable with that. So of course, we're happy to see you involved in the process, and so we'll make those resources available to you. I see Katrina has posted a link to the website in the chat, so you have that link as well.
And Ryan, there was a question, I'm sorry, I just wanted to address, there was one more question. For the additional meetings that we'll be having, like the Planning Commission workshops, we won't be mailing out for those meetings, but we will have all of that information on our website, and we will also be doing, again, we'll promote that via our listserv, which is what you can sign up for. And we will also use social media and that sort of thing to let people know about those meetings.
And I also failed to mention another resource that's available. If you go onto that SSPA website, there's an option to fill out a form through our engagement platform called Public Input. If you have any questions, comments, or things on individual projects, there's a form to fill out on the website, and then that's entered into our database for consideration. So that's another avenue that you have as well. Question, will all of these projects be a part of the workshops? Unless we receive notification from a nominator that they're withdrawing an application or something like that, all of the projects that we currently have in our pipeline here will be part of the workshops. Of course, not. There's no guarantee that those projects will all make it onto the work plan. Of course, they'll continue through the screening process, but as of now, unless we receive a request to withdraw, we'll be considering them in the workshops as well. So thank you, Kelly. That's a good question. Have another question here from Kelly. Are the workshops going to be in person or in Zoom? These are going to be in person. And so those will be held at the Fairfax County Government Center, 201, sorry, I believe it's 21000 Government Center Parkway in Fairfax. And where we would have Planning Commission public hearings, board hearings. Those will all be in person.
Ryan, I'm happy to answer that question. We don't know how many projects will be per workshop. We're trying to balance it between the 3 evenings. So there'll be approximately anywhere from 13 to 16 nominations. I believe that how it works out. There might be some that are more on certain evenings, just because we have to handle all of them across the county. But it is you are able to speak on those evenings, although it is very brief. But you're welcome. The community is welcome to come out and speak on any of the nominations.
Okay, well, seeing how we are not getting many more questions here, I think we're going to go ahead and call this an evening here. And again, I want to just thank everyone for being here on the call with us and for bearing with us as we went a little bit over our schedule. But it was a valuable conversation. We received a lot of valuable feedback here, and we really look forward to the next steps and having you part of that. So again, if there's any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out with us or reach out to us, and we'll be back in touch with you shortly. Great. Thanks so much and have a good evening.